Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the No Matter What Club. On this episode, we're chatting with Edna D Mascara. Edna is everybody's favorite housewife from Medina, Minnesota, serving sharp wit, big hair, and even bigger heart. A decorated queen, she's been crowned Miss Midwest Comedy Queen and Windy City Comedy Queen. In 2018, she won Miss Serenity and now serves as host and producer of the Serenity pageant, a sober fundraiser that has raised tens of thousands of dollars for the recovery spaces across Chicago. Out of drag, she is a public health professional with a Master of Public Health from Loyola University, Chicago. She spent 5 years in HIV prevention before transitioning into substance use treatment. Most recently working at Lutheran Social Services of Illinois, she now brings her compassion, cultural humility, and commitment to LGBTQIA+ care and is working at No Matter What Recovery. We're so excited to have her. Whether on stage or in the community, Edna is dedicated to creating connection, inspiring resilience, and proving that healing can come with a little humor. Let's get started and welcome back to the No Matter What Club. I am so excited to be here with everybody. It feels so nice to be in Chicago. Joining us today, we have my beautiful husband, Anthony Aranaga, Chief Operations Officer and co-founder of No Matter What Recovery. We have Thomas Allen, Program Director of No Matter What Recovery. And the newest addition to our team, we have Edna D Mascara, who is joining us.
Hey, Edna. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So excited to have you on the team and to just be able to be in Chicago. I mean, it's crazy that this has happened. I want to know, does Andy and Edna kind of just commingle? How'd this all happen?
Oh my goodness. It's been a very long journey for me. I started doing drag when I was 18. And I am now
Just a few years ago.
just 1 or 2 years ago. And so it's been a minute I've been doing drag. But the discovery of Edna was really, I wound up in San Francisco for a little bit in the recovery community there. And one of my friends and I, we would always kiki back and forth in Minnesota accents. So, I'd say, I'm getting ready to make a hot dish tonight for the show we're going to. And he would respond and we just go on and on and on. And he would call me Edna and I would call him Doris. And then there is a monthly sober drag show there called Mascara.
Oh.
It supports the Castro Country Club, if you've ever heard of that, right? The LGBTQ community club there in the Castro. And I wound up performing in that regularly. And through that, I sort of discovered, Edna, that thing I do on the side, is actually the drag persona I want to do. And when I first figured it out, I would never stop talking as Edna. So I'd always tack in the Minnesota voice anytime I was in drag, no matter what was happening, backstage, front stage. And everybody did not care for that. It's cute for a couple of minutes. It's cute for a show. But backstage, everybody's like, girl, can you
tone it down?
Stop. And so, that's where that happened. And then I wound up back in Chicago to get my master's degree in public health. And that was about 2015. And at the time, there was someone else in recovery who was competing for the Continental pageant. Do y'all know what that is?
Yeah. I just found out about that. Yeah.
Right. So that person actually wound up...
Actually, can we hold on 1 second? Can you explain what it is for people that don't know?
Yeah, so Continental is a pageantry system that started in the, I believe, 70s. It was the first national drag pageant to allow trans women to compete who had had body modification. And so it's a really important system for the community, right? Because it honors, the femininity of drag and it doesn't exclude people who have really built up the drag community, right? And so it got so big, it split into 4 divisions, which is Miss, which is like the regular skinny girls. And then there's, well, because next there's plus, which is for us larger, more full-figured women. Then there's elite for women of a certain age.
Okay.
Yes. And then there's Mr., which is for the male presenting. And so my drag mother, who wound up becoming my drag mother, was competing that year. And I was just so fascinated by the pageantry of everything that she took me under her wing, taught me a lot about drag pageantry, helped me elevate my look to, this. Because before I was just throwing on a shake and go wig and like some mall drag and calling it a day.
Some mall drag.
And now everything, I got so used to it, everything's custom for me. I can't really, I don't buy off the rack unless there's like some way I can hide it. But I mostly just have things made anymore.
It's kind of interesting. I just saw the parallel between like a drag family and sponsorship, or your sober family or your chosen family.
Oh, very much so. So that drag family, we were all sober in Natasha's, her name was Natasha Douglas, Miss Continental Plus 2016, look her up. And she was fabulous. But yeah, we were all sober. So I had my sister Cleopocalypse. I had my sister Fonda Cox. I had my sister Lady Synagoga. And we were all just this little sober drag family supporting each other. And as time went on, everybody kind of split off. Lady Synagoga went to New York and then LA. And Fonda went to New York. And Natasha went to LA. And Cleo did a lot of TV shows. So went to LA and I think is in New York now. So I'm kind of the only one in Chicago anymore. And have started my own little drag family. It's not necessarily based on sobriety, but like that is foundational element for me, and that they respect that and that they support that. And we really are more interested in my drag family in like social services, right? Like how can we use our drag to promote a cause? How can we better our community through drag? And so that's been really interesting for me.
I love that. I feel like, we all come from a very strong, sober family. And I think, having these people that I look up to that have just kind of guided me through sobriety, it's just been beautiful and really important.
Yeah.
I think anything in life, though, there's always, it's always beneficial when you have that mentorship, whether it's sponsee, drag, professional, it's always those school when you're a little kid and there's that one teacher that you just love and adore and they love you. And it's like, it's always through life. You always remember those mentors and what they did for you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I wanted to talk about a few things with having you here, and I'm really interested to kind of hear, well, professionally. So you've worked in HIV prevention, you worked in substance abuse disorder, and now you're our newest addition to No Matter What, working with substance use and mental health. How has being a lady of the night and being this, career professional during the day, how do you balance it all?
I have to be very selective about like what gigs I do because my professional career does come before Edna, right? Without the professional career, I wouldn't be able to afford all of this. And it's not cheap. I'll tell you what. So that's kind of part of it, right? And then the other part is finding times when it makes sense to integrate Edna into the work. And so, previously when I was in HIV prevention, I was at the Center on Halstead, which is the largest LGBTQIA plus community organization in the Midwest.
Wow.
And so there were opportunities for me to, promote HIV testing and prevention through, I did videos as Edna during COVID to tell people about our services and that we were still going. We did some fundraisers. I actually wound up getting connected with Edna through my work to DIFA, which is Design Industry Foundation Fights AIDS.
Oh, wow.
And they have every year a lip sync battle. And it's just they had me take over during the pandemic. So we filmed it all. And then they moved live the next year to a small venue. And then we moved to a bigger venue the year after that. And now we're at a huge venue where it's actually become their biggest fundraiser of the year. And it's probably my favorite fundraiser of the year too. It's just so satisfying to be able to use drag to raise the amount of money that they raise every year. I think this year they made over $100,000 that night.
Wow.
That's amazing.
And it just feels good to be able to really give back with my drag because, again, when I go back to think about San Francisco, it was the sober drag queens in San Francisco who really supported me, and I really admired that. And, I had never really thought about there being sober drag queens before that. But really in San Francisco, the sober drag queens kind of run that city.
I love it. I do sober drag as well. My drag name is Sarah Quill. Okay, I'm going to pause. Thomas, I want you to ask a question. You say, I know Chicago has the world famous Serenity pageant here. Can you tell me about that?
Okay.
Got it.
Got it. The Chicago has the world famous Serenity pageant here. Pageant? I'm like thrown off right now. You just threw me off. Pause. And I was like, oh.
Take a deep breath for a second. You can pause
get some water.
and then say the question.
I'm not a podcast girl. This is my first one. Okay, so I'm not. This isn't something. They were like, we're gonna throw you on this, and we're gonna throw you with Edna
Have
right
fun.
now, and this is who you're gonna be working with.
Great. Listen, no
Let's do
quicker
it.
way
When we
to
first
develop
started
a
rolling, I
working
looked over him. He
relationship.
was like this. And I touched his arm like, it's okay,
I
sweetie.
know. I'm like, well, I'm not that kind of girl.
It's just,
That's all right.
The camera isn't my forte anymore in sobriety.
we're just having a normal conversation.
It is. It's just a conversation.
What am I saying?
So you're going to
Asking
say,
about
tell me about the
Serenity.
Miss Serenity pageant.
Okay, let's do it. So Edna, tell me about the Miss Serenity pageant.
Oh, okay.
Is that good? I don't know.
That was so natural.
That was perfect.
This is yeah.
That's great.
Tony, why? It's Tony that's making me so nervous.
So, Edna, do you have any responses to Thomas's question?
Yeah, so the Serenity pageant is a sober drag pageant here in Chicago that has been around for, I don't know, longer than I've been in the sober community here.
I got sober here in 2006, and I did it.
Okay.
And but before Sarah Quill, I was serotonin when I did Miss Serenity. And I had 4 teeth in my mouth.
So it goes back at least to 2006. And I wound up competing in 2018 and winning.
Oh.
Okay.
Yes, thank
She's that
you.
girl.
On my first try.
Uh,
And
I know that's right.
and previously, my drag mother, Natasha Douglas, had been producing that pageant and hosting that pageant.
Great.
And she was sort of
Wow.
she was sort of done doing it, right? She had done it for long enough. She was like, here, Edna, I trust you to handle this pageant. So I've been producing it since then. I actually produced the year I stepped down. So I was stepping down, producing and hosting, which was a very interesting year for me. And then, so we raised money. It's a benefit, right? And it's for Chicago sober orgs across the city. So it used to be for the rec room. We did it for Newtown. Now it's been absorbed by the Chicago Roundup, which has been great because it's such a big event that I really needed more people to come in and help me. And I was hoping, like what would happen with before, is that a couple of professional queens would fold in along the way, and that has yet to happen. So I'm happy to have the backing of the Roundup and be able to help them raise money.
Well, I'm happy to come now that we are in Chicago to.
Are you gonna?
I mean, I might as well.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
he has
He's
to,
putting
yeah.
it. Yeah. He's. You heard it here.
I mean, this year I'm doing.
Serenity.
This year I'm doing LA version of
Jake's gonna be so mad at you.
of the. I'm doing the LA version of the other one that you were talking about. It's called Best in Drag Show, and we raise money for the Alliance for Housing and Healing, and we raise a lot of money and do some really amazing work. It's pretty high production, and doing drag is super costly. But the thing that I love about it, and talking about this, is like I struggled with internalized homophobia when I got sober. And so, I would walk into rooms and I would try to present as masculine as possible. And I really feel like that was like an adaptive coping strategy to being bullied in school, where I always felt like I had to present a certain kind of way. And so doing drag has helped me really kind of look at the internalized homophobia that I struggled with. And then also, I think being in a relationship where Tony supports it has also really helped me, because as a single man, I was always, like, oh, I'm never gonna get a man if I have drag in my house or whatever. And so now we're in the process of cleaning out our garage, and my beautiful husband bought me all of these covers, because I have everything custom made too. So he bought me all of these covers for all of my outfits and everything. It was so cute.
I mean, you can't get them dusty in the garage.
Not the custom drag. No.
Thomas, is your custom drag dusty?
I get mine off the rack.
But it was funny to see the progression over the years of your drag through your clothes. I mean, it was like a museum in there. That's why you needed dust covers, like any museum would have.
I started as an Amazon girl, and for my first, I think it was for CMALA, which is the Crystal Meth Anonymous convention for Los Angeles. And I started at actually Miss Serenity, but then like when I started doing it in LA in the sobriety, it was like my hips were down to my knees, and like I was just like falling apart. And my drag mother, his name's Andrew Garside. Hi, Andrew. I fancy myself as like an adult JonBenet Ramsey is what I try. It's what I try to look like toddlers and tiaras, but like as a 40-year-old.
I love that.
I wish we could. You know what, Paul? I love you. I love you so much. I wish we could put up a split screen right now. So there was, okay, because your drag really is super polished. Now, sorry to turn, I know you're the star right now, but if we can just hand the camera right now. Because the image, because your drag is polished now. Like, you've come a long way. But I remember like the early days when you first did it, and I remember one wig in particular, because now you do hair like Edna, right? Yeah. Like, it's kind of big, it's beautiful. But there was that one year where you had that green and black wig that was like kind of dreadlocky. I wish we could have a split screen of then and now, right here, right now.
I had little poofs on the front.
Yeah, yes,
I was like in my era.
Yeah,
when I was wearing.
It was like Charlie XCX, and now he's like.
Yeah. So, so I've just figured out proportions and all of that. But now that, I love the drag conversation, I would like to get into something a little more, not sensitive. I think it's a really great topic of conversation. And it's something that I was like, what could I talk about that I feel like the people that do watch our podcast would have an interest in hearing? And one of the things that I want to talk about is the reframing of the word queer. Because I know that as it's probably a generational word where for a lot of people it can seem offensive. Whereas like today, I feel like it's a word that we use because you can't just say LGBTQ ABCDEFG every time that our acronym is getting so long, and we obviously want to be inclusive of everybody. And so we use the word queer today, and it's socially acceptable. But I know for some folks, it's not a socially acceptable word. Do you?
Yeah, I actually went through that journey myself because, I'm of a certain age, and I grew up, so I grew up in the Colorado, Nebraska, Wyoming area. And when I was in high school, it was when Matthew Shepard happened. And I was actually born in the hospital that he died in. So I was very close to that. And there were a lot of jokes about like that queer got what was coming to him. Actually, one of my relatives said that at Thanksgiving dinner that year. And so it really had a very negative connotation to me at first. But the more I learned about really how inclusive the word is, the more I've leaned into it. And I really appreciate that we have sort of a nice umbrella term that we've been able to reclaim, right? And I think it takes anytime we reclaim a word, right, it takes the sting out of it, and it gives us a little bit more power. I'll never forget my first Pride when I was like 16 or 17 in Denver, and the drag queens were, throwing around all the queer, like all the gay slurs, right? But it felt very empowering for them to be using those words, and it felt very like, oh, welcome home, sort of, right? Like, these are our words and this is our community and we're going to use them in a joyful sort of way. And so I really appreciate that.
Did you have that kind of experience too?
Yeah, I think when, I was growing up, queer, the F word, no one, it was a slur, and it was like, I remember back when I was a kid, it just made me like cower and feel like I wanted to hide. And so when I hear that word today, even, I still am reminded of that. I think trauma sounds a little bit of a strong word, but there was something there if I'm having a visceral reaction today when I hear that word. So, but I think as time has gone on, I've embraced the word queer now. The other word I still have a hard time with saying, but
What about you? Did you have any sort of feelings around
I mean, I think that was the big reason on why it took me until I was 22 until I came out. I was born in Southern California, but I grew up in Arizona. And it was Lake Havasu City, Arizona, very narrow-minded town, and there was only like less than a handful of us that were really out, And so and I came from a religious background too as well. So having that guilt and shame for having these feelings, I suppressed it for so long. It wasn't until, and I feel like a lot of my addiction stemmed from that too as well, of like suppressing those feelings and not being my authentic self. It wasn't until I was like 21, 22 years old when I finally came to California to take care of my grandparents, because I was a CNA at that time, and I got to go to West Hollywood. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. I have, and she was a mess because 21, 22 and alcohol was involved. There was a lot of blackout moments. But yeah, I think growing up in such a small town is that, really it just took a long time for me just to become me and be an acceptance of me at that time too.
I love that you brought up guilt and shame, and I know that it's kind of a heavy topic, but I really feel like for me that propelled my addiction. And when I think of crystal meth, I think of something that eradicates shame, right? Like, it makes me feel like I'm this superhero and I continue to use it because I don't have, all of the shame is gone. My parents kicking me out when I was 15, gone. All of the things that happened, gone. Hurricane Katrina that I went through was gone. Like, being feminine, but trying to navigate the gay community when I didn't feel like I was worthy of love, shame, gone. And I could just do anything that I wanted to do. And I felt like I was Superman. And we say in the rooms, like, or in sobriety or recovery, it starts out as fun and then turns into fun with problems and then just turns into problems. Do you mind talking a little bit about your sobriety?
Yeah. So I, knew so alcohol was sort of my first love, right? And that feeling you talk about of all the shame gone, right? The fear gone. I would only do drag if I was drunk, right? I'd call it my drinking face. And I'd use it as an excuse to get just wasted. And so alcohol was really sort of the beginning problem for me. Around 25, I also discovered that I was living with HIV. And at that point, the problems were there, right? Like, I was having so many problems. And that's when I first began my recovery journey. So my path has not been linear. I'm not someone who did it on the first try and like stayed sober for all those years. And I used to, and then I would use about that, right? Or drink about that, because I was ashamed that I couldn't stay sober, right? I was ashamed that sometimes that I had to tell people that I was sober. And so then, I don't really remember when crystal meth came into the equation for me. I think it was around my 30s, early 30s. I was like working out and getting really fit, and That's really when it, I guess, became really a thing for me. And I definitely used it, for chemsex purposes, right? Like that was my thing, until I would get very paranoid and need to be kicked out of the party because I was bringing everybody down with my wonderful imagination.
Okay. I've been that girl.
Were you that girl?
Yes, I was so that girl. You did not want me in the party. Psychosis is real.
But in the beginning, it wasn't like that. So it
No,
progressed to that.
and I don't think for me too, I feel like when it came down to like the mental aspect and psychosis, a lot of it had to do with how I was using the substance too at that time. I think when you intravenously use,
Right.
that's a whole another world that just brought me to my knees. And when that started to come into play, that's when the psychosis, the mental break really hit. And that's where I was not the fun girl anymore.
Yeah, I like if I had to sum up my addiction in kind of like like categories, I say that I was 33% sex tweaker, 33% interior designer, and 33% drug dealer. So like I was painting walls in a jockstrap and selling drugs. Like that was my get down. And that's when it was fun. It was like, I was living my best life and all of these things. And then, I did change the method of which I was using. And to be honest, I'm so grateful for that because it brought me to my knees so much faster and got me out of this spiral that like I couldn't get out of. And so to be honest, it was something I was really grateful for. But, alcohol wasn't even really a thing for me because it interfered with my GHB use. And so, I had gotten sober and then I was like, maybe I'll drink, and then drinking led to other substances. And so I'm 100% abstinent, and life is so beautiful today. It's just, I love sobriety. I love being sober.
What was the defining moment for you when you were nearing that end?
I wound up in San Francisco, homeless. My parents weren't talking to me. I had nowhere to go. And I was hanging out with someone who said, what are you going to do now? And I was like, I don't know. I really don't know. And he said, well, I'm in recovery, and maybe you should go to this place called the Castro Country Club, which I mentioned before, and just ask for help. And so I did, and I wound up coming across someone who has been sober for 40, I think he's coming up on 44 years this year. And he said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You are going to stay with me. You're going to access these social services. We're going to get you into sober living or treatment. And so I did. I stayed with him and his friend for, I think, three months it took for me to get into a program. And then I finally got into a program, and really that's where, like, I was brought to my knees, and yet still I wasn't able to maintain sobriety, right? There was still that piece missing. And for me, eventually what I came to learn was that, I too grew up religious, right? And so I grew up with a lot of religious trauma. And the wording in the AA Big Book was too familiar to the language that I had heard in church for me to be able to really absorb it. So I wound up discovering Recovery Dharma, where a lot of the concepts are quite similar in the books, right? Like you do these searching sort of inquiries about yourself and look at these things from a very radical acceptance perspective, right? And there was no language there for me to have to fight against because I had never been harmed by Buddhism. And so going into Recovery Dharma actually gave me the language to eventually go back to 12-step and go, oh, okay, now I understand what you're saying. I just had to hear it from somewhere else, right? And I also do SMART because I believe in science. Yay, science. and so I like.
Can you say that in your Minnesota accent?
Yay, science. But it really, that informed me as well, because I can see now what 12-step had stumbled across, right? It was some early sort of CBT stuff going on in there. If you know what you're talking about, and you have someone who knows the big book well, has studied it well, and can help you sort of go through the things. And because I had the background of my master's degree and all that sort of stuff, just learning all those things, it really, for me, was very powerful to have. Like, I just needed every arsenal thrown at my addiction that I could, and because I like to think myself out of the rooms.
I love it, and I want to come back to that. Thomas, can you explain what CBT is
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
for the listeners that don't know what it is?
This isn't about me. This is about Edna. I blank right now, honestly.
Okay, great. So you just mentioned CBT. Can you explain what that is for the people that...
Sorry.
Are you captivated by Edna's glitter right now?
I am.
The sparkles,
Low-key, I am.
the accent,
yes.
the eyeshadow is gorgeous.
She is it for me right now. Questioning my sexuality
What
right
can you-
now.
What is CBT?
Yes.
So CBT is sort of a set of tools that helps you to sort of identify and analyze, thinking distortions, right? There's a whole list of thinking distortions. And by being able to identify those and replace those thinking distortions or challenge those thinking distortions, you're sort of able to reframe how you think about things and how you look at things. And I think, there's a lot of that in 12-step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, this step, I'm really just looking at how I think about things. Oh my goodness, that's CBT stuff right there. Just begin to notice it, right? We don't ask you to start changing those thoughts right away. Just begin to notice your thoughts. And then we're going to move you into like some thought replacement and some, we could go even deeper with like REBT or DBT, right? With like, like the ABCDs of thinking, right? Which is what sort of SMART is sort of grounded in, right? It's the REBT stuff. But REBT is really just, a branch of CBT in my
Yeah,
world.
I think that for me, when I think of, therapeutic modalities versus, what I've applied or learned in 12 steps, for me, it really does. You spoke about this arsenal, right? And so I take every tool that's given to me, and I'll try to utilize it, and I'll say, you know what, this works for me and this doesn't. I mean, I'm not a huge meditation person. He meditates and he loves it. It's just I don't have the patience to do it. But so that's something that doesn't work for me. But reframing my thinking or becoming more self-aware through doing step work or doing the heavier, dutier work. I know that's probably not a word, but I just made it up. But the heavy duty stuff and trying to figure out the behaviors that I want to change, how I make my amends, how I right my wrongs. That work for me was really important because I was a selfish drug addict and alcoholic. Like my priority was every relationship in my life was transactional. What can I get from you and what can you give me? And that was how I lived my life. And the thing that I love about getting sober is it's a rule book that we get, but not really rules, but a suggestion book that we get. But I've learned that in sobriety, the three things that I need to do is to, be genuinely authentic. If a situation arises, I need to do the work around it, even if it's uncomfortable. And then, I operate in faith over fear and surrender the outcome, right? Like those are the three things for me. And I've learned that like I have fear of financial failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of not being loved, fear of being loved, fear of success, all of these things. And it says in the book, we walk through life with fear and, how to really just kind of dissect what works for sobriety. The thing that I love about sobriety is they say it's a simple program for complicated people. And I can sit here and talk all of this, I say all of these things, but for me, it's just like, it's really simple. I was told to sit down, shut up, and do the work. And that's what worked for me. Yeah.
So when you got sober,
yes.
And you talked to us about that defining moment, but it sounded like it took a little while to get you to that place of like complete surrender when you were with those two, the two people that brought you in San Francisco. Were you still a little like fighting it a little bit? Can you tell us about what that was like?
I think fighting it, what is the best way I can think about it? I eventually had to find a framework to forgive myself for not being able to maintain long-term sobriety, right? And what that framework looked like was radical acceptance and understanding that just because I had a slip or a relapse does not mean that I lost all the information and knowledge and personal growth that I had gained before, and that I could just keep moving forward in my path. Just because I went a little bit left doesn't mean I can't veer back right, right? And that was pivotal for me. And you know, in SMART they say, so if you're driving a car from New York to LA and your car breaks down in Denver, do you stop your trip and go back to New York and start the trip all over again? Or do you fix the car in Denver and continue your trip to LA? And I like to think of that as a way to look at recovery, especially for people who struggle with relapse, because it is so hard to come back from relapse. There's all these stories that, you know, I would begin to tell myself about, well, I'm going to be embarrassed and I don't want to start all over again. And I'm ashamed and everybody's going to judge me. And I just had all these thoughts. And, you know, some of the people may have been judging me, and those are the people that I don't really need in my recovery circle. I look for the non-judgmental people. I look for the people who are doing the work on themselves. I am more interested these days in how well a person is than how long they've been sober. That just I've met people who are many years sober and really
Not well.
And I've met people who are 6, 7, 8, you know, a year sober and really thriving and really like getting it. And to me, that's what I want to focus on. Like, okay, you're doing so great right now. You're doing well right now. How do we maintain this motivation to keep going forward without it being like, well, I have to get long-term recovery. That's not the goal. Long-term recovery is a byproduct of doing the work, in my humble opinion.
I think that's a great point. I feel like everybody's sobriety is going to look different. You know, for me, what it looks like for me is sponsorship, service, because I'm a selfish person and I like to take. So service for me reminds me that it needs to be a priority to give back and not just take. So sponsorship, service, being in the book, having a relationship with a higher power, apologizing when I, you know, say or do something that I feel like I could have addressed differently, and making that behavior right. It's you know, now it's second nature to me. When I first got sober, I remember having 2 years sober, and I was you know, driving from Silver Lake to Brentwood, which is about like an hour and 45-minute commute in LA. I had a PT Cruiser because it was all I could afford. My door was a different color than the rest of the car, and the window didn't roll down, and all I could afford was fast food. And so I was driving to Carl's Jr., which is a fast food chain in California, and I would go through the drive-through, and I couldn't roll down my window. The window was broken, so I couldn't roll down the window to order. And so I had to open my door to order the food, and then close the door, and then drive around to the next window, open the door to grab my food, and then close the door to drive around, give him my credit card. And I drove into this little parking spot, and I just lost it. And I called my sponsor, and I was crying, and I was like, I'm 2 years sober. I'm sponsoring people. I'm doing all the right things. I have, very little money in my bank account. My car is falling apart. Like, where the fuck are my promises? Everybody's getting this cash and prizes and all these things, and I'm just fucking struggle bus. And he just laughed at me. And he's like, I promise you, everything will work out. You just have to do the next indicated step. And what I learned in sobriety was to follow the advice of people that came before me. And just just surrender and I have a disease of perception and thinking, right? And my thinking isn't always right. So I rely on people that I look up to think for me sometimes, especially in those moments when I'm feeling a little dysregulated. And I'm so grateful for that struggle. I mean, if I didn't get the opportunity to, or not the opportunity, but the gift to crawl before I was able to walk, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be sober today. And in the time it sucked. I hated it. Like, getting sober is uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable. And you mentioned trust the process, right? Like,
yeah,
that is something that why drag is so interesting to me. Because as you're getting into drag, at the beginning stages, you've got your brows glued down, you've got just a base, you look kind of like a mole person. And then you start like putting on weird things, and like it gets to a weird spot in the middle where you're like, oh, what's happening here? And you just keep going. You know what the process is for the makeup. You know what's going to happen at the end, right? But if I were to just quit midway through because it looks hideous now, then I'm not trusting the process, right? Mm-hmm. And I have to tell that to anyone I put in drag. Sometimes they'll look midway through at the makeup and they're like, oh, are you gonna, I'm like, I've been doing this long enough. I know the process. Trust me, trust my process, and we'll get you to where you want to go. And I think that it's helped me to have that very concrete example of trusting that physical process that helps me to understand the more nebulous trust the process of recovery, right? Because there's not really anything concrete you can grab onto there. It's just doing the things, working on yourself, throwing yourself into whatever program you've decided to do, and showing up accountably with humility. That's a new thing a thing that in the beginning I didn't understand what humility was, right? I thought it was like bowing down and kowtowing and like being, oh yes. And really it's not about that. It's about knowing your value in an honest way and knowing that you are a human being, and because of that you deserve dignity and worth, and you're not better than anybody else and you're not worse than anybody else. You're just a beloved human being.
It's also your humanness too, right? Like realizing that as humans, it's okay to live that human experience, which includes sometimes faltering or making a mistake or taking a misstep, however you want to characterize that. But that's part of being human, is having that human experience and maybe making a mistake. And so when you realize that, and you have that thought process in your head, when something happens, it becomes no big deal. Whereas I think we, a lot of times, as people in recovery, or maybe some people that are new in recovery, they get tripped up when they make that mistake, or if they make that mistake. So can I take another hard turn here? 'Cause I want to go back to your drag persona and you doing drag. Mm-hmm. Do you work the nightlife at all? Or is it because you've talked to us about your charitable work? What tell us about?
I'm not super involved in the nightlife community here anymore. I did do some of that for a while. Yeah. I found it exhausting. I found it to be not super gratifying. And, I've created this whole drag persona that actually requires you to think a little bit about the things I'm doing. It's not just like I do backflips and splits and like that's that. I have a persona. You have to pay attention to the things I'm saying. There's double entendre. My jokes are sometimes very subtle, right? And that doesn't land well in a bar at midnight where everybody's drunk and they just want to see you do a split, right? And so that's part of why I went off into the other direction, because I found that I'm more valued there. I do like to do a brunch because usually people aren't drunk at the beginning. Yeah. They're drunk by the end. But but at the beginning, so I can establish to them who I am before they're too far gone to really get it anymore. And so I do enjoy brunches, and I do quite a few of those. Actually, my drag family, we just started a new drag brunch at Devil Dogs, which is like a hot dog place here in Chicago. We started it last month. We're doing it every other month right now. Hot dogs and mascara. Okay. And it's been a blast, like performing with my drag family. They actually don't have a liquor license at the location we're at right now, so it's a sober brunch just by, force of not having it available. And I find it highly, highly enjoyable. But the nightlife I'm tired. I want to go to bed.
Seriously. Well, your day job is also, you don't do easy work. Like the work that we do is emotionally,
Totally.
First of all, let me say this. I love the work that we do. I think that I was sharing with someone the other day about my experience of working in behavioral health is I feel like I got the golden ticket of a career, right? Like I get the opportunity to turn, to be able to utilize my life experience in a way to help others. And for me, I never thought that I would have that opportunity. So I'm very grateful for it, but it's a lot.
I don't think people really understand, like when you were talking about the hours you work too, those last couple hours, like how much energy you're giving into these people who are trying to get sober, a full day's work, you're exhausted by the end of the day. And really to understand like the meaning behind self-care and what we need working in this field, there's moments I have to just check out. Like I cannot, my social battery is just out the window because you're really giving your all to help this person that is looking for some answers or looking for help in all these places. And you're trying to be that mentor, that person, and also people who work in, treatment, especially for myself, I try to be that example of like, look I'm a sober man, but I also work in treatment and this is what it can be,
Can I ask what your self-care looks like?
So I say this all the time too, as well. A lot of my recovery is outside of recovery. I'm not saying that I don't love meetings, and I'm not saying I love my sponsor, and there are moments I'm calling, and I've been through the steps, and I've identified that, especially in early recovery, I played the victim role. So to understand my part through the steps was a big eye opener for me, and I was like, oh, how dare you? Like, excuse me? But I think that comes with growth too as well. But like a lot of my recovery is outside of recovery. I think there was there was very much chapters in my recovery now, and I'll be coming up on 5 years sober this year, so I just learned a lot. Like year one was just, for me, it was just like, let me just get to year one. Let me just figure out how to get sober. And then year two was like, okay, let me really dive into the work, into myself, and like, let me dive into like, there's wreckage of my past I needed to do, So it was just like identifying who I am in sobriety. So like my self-care looks like, I love working on my physical fitness because for a long time I didn't take care of my body. I put my body through some hell, And then a lot of it is like, I call myself the old man. Like when you say I'm tired, my friends say all the time, I don't care. Like I don't need to see all the things. I've done it all. I've been to the parties. I've been to the bars. I'm not that guy anymore. So my self-care is really for me. It's really just taking time for myself and either working out, staying at home, watching a show, doing absolutely nothing.
Because we talk with people all the time, and it's hard not to take some of that home with us sometimes, for me at least. And so being able to disconnect, I would like to consider myself a behavioral health analysis unit from Criminal Minds. I'm an honorary
CSI.
CSI. Okay. Yeah, I'm an honorary I watch a lot of crime shows, and so I whenever I'm watching them, I'm able to disconnect, and I'm really good at figuring out who did it.
Okay. He is the detective. Okay. And I am that old man watching a documentary at home about chest.
Chest or chest?
Chest. Chest too, every now and then.
What do you do in your self-care?
I love to go out to eat. But I love like trying a new place. That's like my favorite thing to do, like finding a new place and going and trying it. We love going to Disney when we have the opportunity to. As far as like working out, that's more like a necessity, not so much like something I enjoy doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I do it because
for me. Yeah.
Really, I do.
Okay, great.
I go through phases.
And then what do you do for self-care? What's your guilty pleasure to kind of escape and detach?
There's my guilty pleasure, and then there's the stuff that I do for self-care that actually helps refuel me. But if I'm not focused, I can binge a whole Netflix series.
Okay.
Like that. And sleep is very important to me. I've noticed I am very aware of the fact that when I don't get at least 8 hours of sleep, my mental health suffers. And it makes it much harder to focus through anxiety or fear or depression or whatever it is. So sleep is important. But really, if I really know I need to be taking care of myself, the main thing I need to do is I need to be creating things, making art, getting in drag, even if I don't feel like it. Because I found this book called The Artist's Way a couple years ago, and it wound up being really transformational for me. And the understanding that because we are creations, our gift back to the universe is to be creative and to create, and to not create is self-will. And so that's a really easy measure for me. Like, am I creating or am I not creating? And it helps me look at, okay, maybe we're not doing so great if we haven't gotten in drag in a minute, or we haven't painted furniture, or we haven't decorated, or whatever the creative thing is that I've decided to do.
I love that. I feel like we've covered some really great ground today. I feel like we talked about drag, we talked about working in behavioral health, we talked about hobbies and self-care. Edna, thank you so much for joining us today on the No Matter What Club. I'm so excited to be able to work with you and to have you here. And so thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to join the team. Yes. I could just spit.
Could you say that in your Minnesota accent?
I'm so excited to join the team. I could just spit.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next week.